And one of his most famous such acts occurred at the Newburgh Conspiracy. The Newburgh Conspiracy, if you don't know, is when though many of you probably do, was when the troops were going to revolt. Some of them were pushing him to become king. This was after it was clear the British were going to, after Yorktown, after it was clear the British were going to give up. But before treaty had been signed. And so the British were still occupying New York, Charleston and Savannah, otherwise had pulled back. And Washington's main army was up in Newburgh, New York, waiting to go. And because the British had effectively stopped the war, the states had stopped paying Congress any money. And so there was no money to pay the troops, and they were getting rebellious and ready to overthrow. That was one of the earlier stories I could tell in this book, because this was sandwiching the period from Yorktown to him becoming president. And so Washington puts down the revolt by making an appearance at a meeting of the officers where they are plotting a revolt. And one of his great motions, he makes this speech, and it wasn't very convincing because Washington, as we know, was not a very good public speaker because he didn't have any teeth, and he had these false teeth that he sort of mumbled. But he was, as I say, a very effective actor. And so he had worked in one bit of acting in the middle. He'd finished the speech, and then to sort of cinch it, he pulled out a letter, and then he pretended like he couldn't read it, or maybe he couldn't read it very well. And so he pulled out his glasses, which I'm just saying because I have to do it to read this. He pulled out his glasses, and he looked out on his men, and he said, "I've not only grown gray in your service," because he had white hair by then, "but I've also gone nearly blind." And nobody had ever seen him. None of his men had ever seen him. His officers hadn't seen him with glasses before. And according to the legend, at least, this humanized him. And the troops began to cry. And they felt like he was really for them. And that, more than anything, according to the legend of Newburgh, diffused the coup d'etat by the troops and made it so Washington to do what was characteristic of Washington then, not become king, resign. And that ability to resign power is what made him so beloved and set the tone for American history. Think about it. Think of all the revolutions that ended with the leader becoming a dictator of some sort, whether it be Cromwell or Napoleon later, or think of all of them all around the world today. And what makes America different? Well, part of it is the willingness to go back to private life and not hold on to power. And it's amazing how we as a people can live on the fumes, as it were, of our founding fathers, live on great men, great people who set the tone that has continued to live.